You ever lie awake at night, replaying the same scenario over and over, dissecting every detail until it feels like your brain is on fire? Or maybe you're that person who analyzes a decision until you're frozen in place, unable to move forward. We've all been there. Overthinking can make the simplest things seem impossible. But what if I told you the real problem isn't the situation itself, but the endless loop your mind creates? As they say, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Sound familiar? Overthinking isn't helping you, it's hijacking your peace. It makes you miss out on moments, poisons your clarity, and keeps you trapped in a storm of your own making. But here's the thing. You don't have to live like this. There's a way to cut through the noise and reclaim your mind. Ready to break the cycle? Let's dive into how to stop this self-destructive habit and get your life back on track. If you're done letting overthinking run the show, hit that subscribe button and join the journey to mental freedom. Focus on what you can control. Overthinking usually stems from one big problem. We spend too much time worrying about things outside our control. Think about it. How much of your mental energy is wasted on things you wish would go a certain way but have zero control over? Whether it's stressing about someone else's opinion, replaying a past mistake, or anxiously predicting the future, these are all things that fall outside your power. Yet, they take up so much space in our minds, fueling stress, anxiety, and frustration. The first lesson in breaking the cycle of overthinking is learning to separate what you can control from what you can't. It's easy to say, only focus on what's within your control. But how do we actually do that? The first step is getting clear on where your power lies. You can't control the weather, your boss's mood, or how the traffic will be on any given day. You can't change what already happened, and you certainly can't predict every outcome of the future. What you can control, though, are your actions, your responses, and your mindset. This is where your true power lies. You have control over how you show up in any given moment, how you respond to setbacks, and how much mental energy you invest in worrying about things beyond your reach. A helpful exercise is to ask yourself this simple question when your mind starts spiraling. Is this within my control? If the answer is no, let it go. If it's outside your control, why waste your precious time and mental space on it? A lot of our anxiety comes from trying to control things that are inherently uncontrollable. We want life to go a certain way, and when it doesn't, we resist it mentally, thinking if we just worry or analyze enough, we can somehow bend the outcome to our will. But this approach is flawed because it fights against reality. By accepting that some things are simply out of our hands, we free ourselves from the burden of trying to control the uncontrollable. Focusing on what's within your control doesn't mean ignoring problems or giving up on changing things. Instead, it's about directing your energy where it will have the most impact. For example, if you're stressed about an upcoming presentation, don't waste time overthinking what your co-workers will think. Instead, focus on what you can control, how well you prepare, how much effort you put into practicing, and how you manage your nerves on the day. The rest, how people respond, what technical issues might arise, is outside your control and therefore not worth worrying about. You'll be far more effective when you stop wasting energy on things you can't change. The beauty of this approach is that it simplifies your mental landscape. By narrowing your focus to what's truly within your control, you eliminate a lot of unnecessary stress. You can stop wasting time and energy on things that don't serve you, and instead invest that energy into actions that can make a real difference. This not only reduces overthinking, but also gives you a sense of empowerment, because now you're focusing on what you can do rather than what you can't. So next time you find yourself caught in a spiral of overthinking, take a step back and ask yourself, am I worrying about something I can control, or am I stressing over something outside my power? If it's the latter, recognize it for what it is and let it go. Save your energy for what truly matters, your actions, your thoughts, and your mindset. This shift in focus will not only reduce your tendency to overthink, but will also bring a deeper sense of peace and clarity to your life. 2. Embrace the present moment. Overthinking has a nasty habit of dragging us into two places, the past or the future. We replay past conversations, regretting what we did or said, or we project into the future, imagining all sorts of scenarios that may never happen. The result, we miss out on the present moment, the only time that's truly within our grasp. To stop overthinking, one of the most powerful lessons you can learn is how to live in the now. When you're constantly replaying old mistakes or worrying about future outcomes, you're robbing yourself of peace in the present. You're effectively spending your mental energy on things that don't exist anymore or haven't happened yet. But think about this. The past is unchangeable and the future is unknown. The only time you can act, think, or influence your life is right now. Overthinking distracts you from that truth, trapping you in an endless loop of what ifs and I should haves. But how do we stop our minds from wandering and start being present? One of the best ways is to develop mindfulness, which simply means paying attention to what's happening right now without judgment. Sounds simple, right? But it's harder than it seems because we're so used to letting our minds wander. The key is to train yourself to gently pull your thoughts back whenever you notice them drifting into overthinking mode. Start small. Practice being present in everyday activities. Whether you're having a meal, taking a walk, or even working, bring your attention to the moment. How does the food taste? What sounds do you hear during your walk? What are you feeling right now as you work? These might seem like trivial details, but by focusing on them, you're anchoring yourself to the present. The more you practice this, the more natural it will become, and the less power overthinking will have over you. Another powerful technique to ground yourself in the present is by controlling your breath. It's something simple but highly effective. When you're caught in a storm of overthinking, stop for a moment and take a few deep breaths. Focus on the sensation of the air entering and leaving your body. Feel how your lungs expand and contract. This act of mindful breathing pulls you away from your mental chaos and brings you back to the present moment. Plus, it has a calming effect on your nervous system, which helps reduce anxiety and stress, the very emotions that fuel overthinking. Now, living in the present doesn't mean ignoring the past or the future completely. Of course, we need to learn from our past mistakes and plan for the future. The problem comes when we dwell in these places. The past can't be changed, and the future is unpredictable. By constantly thinking about them, you're essentially putting your mind in a time machine that keeps pulling you away from the one thing you can control, the present moment. Living in the now is freeing. When you're fully engaged in the present, you're not haunted by regrets of the past or paralyzed by fear of the future. You're more focused, more productive, and, perhaps most importantly, more at peace. By learning to let go of the past and stop worrying about the future, you can silence the overthinking mind and start living your life with clarity and purpose. So the next time you catch yourself spiraling into the past or anxiously predicting the future, remind yourself, right now is all I have. Take a deep breath, bring your awareness back to the present, and watch how your overthinking loses its grip on you. It's in this moment that you find real freedom. 3. Accept imperfection. One of the biggest reasons we fall into overthinking is our obsession with perfection. We want everything to go exactly as planned, for every detail to be flawless, and for every decision to be the right one. But life doesn't work that way, does it? In reality, perfection is an illusion. The harder you chase it, the more anxious and paralyzed you become. The third lesson to breaking free from overthinking is learning to accept imperfection in yourself, in others, and in the world around you. Here's the thing: perfectionism fuels overthinking. When you set impossibly high standards for yourself or a situation, your mind goes into overdrive. You start scrutinizing every little detail, replaying scenarios in your head, and stressing over all the ways things could go wrong. It's as if your mind is trying to protect you from making a mistake, but what it's really doing is trapping you in an endless cycle of doubt and second-guessing. By accepting that imperfection is a natural part of life, you free yourself from this mental prison. Think about it. Has anything in life ever gone 100% perfectly according to plan? Probably not. And yet, we continue to stress and overthink, hoping that if we just put in more effort, more thought, or more control, we can somehow force things to be flawless. The truth is, no matter how hard you try, some things will always be out of your hands, and mistakes will happen. And that's okay. The key to letting go of overthinking lies in embracing the messiness of life. When you stop expecting things to be perfect, you also stop overanalyzing every decision or outcome. You accept that some things will go wrong, that not everything will work out the way you imagined, and that you'll make mistakes along the way. This acceptance is liberating. Instead of worrying endlessly about every possible mistake or flaw, you can move forward with confidence, knowing that imperfection is just part of the journey. But how do you embrace imperfection when society pushes the opposite narrative? We live in a world that constantly celebrates success, beauty, and perfection. Social media shows us only the highlight reels of other people's lives, making it easy to compare ourselves and feel like we're falling short. However, what we don't see are the struggles, failures, and imperfections that lie behind those perfect pictures. Everyone deals with imperfection, even if they don't show it. Once you realize that, you'll start to see that perfection isn't the goal, it's progress. To practice accepting imperfection, start small. The next time you make a mistake or something doesn't go as planned, instead of spiraling into overthinking, pause and remind yourself, it's okay to be imperfect. Acknowledge the situation, learn from it if you can, and move on. Over time, this shift in mindset will help you build resilience and reduce the mental energy you waste on trying to make everything perfect. Another helpful practice is to reframe how you view mistakes. Instead of seeing them as failures, view them as opportunities to grow. Every mistake is a chance to learn something new, to improve, and to adapt. When you start seeing imperfections in this light, they become less daunting. You stop fearing them, and as a result, you stop overthinking every step you take. Perfectionism isn't about striving for excellence. It's about an unrealistic fear of failure, and that fear feeds your overthinking. By accepting that perfection is neither possible nor necessary, you release yourself from that fear. You allow yourself to take action without the burden of needing everything to be flawless. This mindset shift not only reduces your overthinking, but also opens the door to greater creativity, confidence, and freedom in all areas of your life. So, let go of the need for perfection. Embrace your flaws, your mistakes, and the beautiful imperfection of life itself. In doing so, you'll find that overthinking loses its power, and you'll start living with more peace, clarity, and joy. 4. Detach from outcomes. One of the main drivers of overthinking is our attachment to specific outcomes. We often have a vision of how things should turn out, and when reality doesn't match our expectations, we spiral into a loop of overanalyzing and worrying. Whether it's a job interview, a relationship, or a personal project, we tie our sense of success or happiness to the outcome, believing that we'll only be satisfied if things go exactly as planned. But this attachment to results is what fuels the constant mental chatter. The next lesson in overcoming overthinking is learning to detach from outcomes. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring or stop trying. It's about finding peace in the process, rather than hinging all your emotions on the result. When you're overly fixated on a particular outcome, you become consumed by thoughts like, what if this doesn't work out? Or what if I fail? These worries trap you in your head, preventing you from being present and engaged with the task at hand. The more you obsess over the outcome, the more pressure you feel, and the more likely you are to overthink every little detail in an attempt to control the uncontrollable. Here's the hard truth: you cannot control every outcome. No matter how well you prepare or how much effort you put in, there are always factors beyond your influence. The only thing you can control is the effort you put into the process and how you respond to the challenges along the way. When you detach from the result, you free yourself from the anxiety of trying to guarantee a specific outcome. Instead, you shift your focus to what you can do in the present moment, taking action, doing your best, and letting go of the need to control the final result. Think of it like planting a seed. You can water it, give it sunlight and care for it, but you cannot force it to grow at a certain speed or produce a specific number of flowers. All you can do is nurture it to the best of your ability and trust that the outcome will unfold as it should. The same applies to life's challenges. You can put in your best effort, but after that, you have to release the outcome and trust that whatever happens, you'll be able to handle it. Detaching from outcomes also means embracing uncertainty. One of the reasons we overthink is because we're uncomfortable with the unknown. We want guarantees, we want certainty, and when we don't have it, our minds go into overdrive trying to predict every possible scenario. But life is unpredictable, and no amount of overthinking will give you control over the future. By accepting that uncertainty is part of life, you let go of the need to know how everything will turn out. And in doing so, you free yourself from the burden of overanalyzing every step of the way. A practical way to practice detaching from outcomes is to set process-based goals rather than outcome-based goals. For example, instead of saying, "I want to land this job," focus on, "I want to give the best interview I can." The first goal is entirely dependent on an external result, while the second is within your control. By focusing on what you can do in the moment, you remove the pressure of needing a specific outcome and allow yourself to engage more fully with the process. This mindset shift is liberating because it reduces the mental strain of constantly worrying about whether things will turn out right. When you detach from outcomes, you still strive for success, but you don't let the fear of failure or disappointment consume you. You approach life with a sense of curiosity and flexibility, knowing that whatever the result, you will be okay. This not only quiets your overthinking mind, but also allows you to live with more confidence and peace. So the next time you find yourself obsessing over how something will turn out, pause and remind yourself, the outcome is not mine to control. Focus on what you can do right now, let go of the rest, and watch how your overthinking begins to fade. You'll find more clarity, less stress, and a greater sense of freedom in everything you do. 5. Reframe failure. One of the greatest triggers of overthinking is the fear of failure. We get caught in mental loops, agonizing over decisions because we're terrified of getting it wrong or not living up to expectations, our own or others. This fear paralyzes us, making us obsess over every possible outcome, every potential mistake, and every way things could go wrong. The more we fear failure, the more likely we are to overthink, which can keep us from taking any action at all. The key to breaking this cycle is to reframe how you think about failure. Most of us have been taught to see failure as something negative, something to avoid at all costs. But here's the truth. Failure is not the enemy. In fact, it's one of the most powerful teachers you'll ever have. Failure is simply feedback, a way for you to learn what doesn't work and how you can improve. When you shift your perspective from seeing failure as a reflection of your worth to viewing it as part of the growth process, it loses its power to keep you trapped in overthinking. Think about the people who inspire you. How many of them got everything right the first time? Probably none. Whether it's an athlete, entrepreneur, artist, or scientist, the road to success is paved with failures. Each misstep, each mistake is a valuable learning experience that helps you grow and move forward. By fearing failure, you're denying yourself the chance to learn and evolve. When you realize that failure isn't a dead end but a stepping stone, you stop fearing it, and in turn, you stop overthinking. One way to reframe failure is to detach your sense of self-worth from the outcome. Too often, we equate failing at something with being a failure ourselves. But your worth as a person isn't determined by whether you succeed or fail at a specific task. You are not your mistakes. Once you separate who you are from what you do, you free yourself from the crippling fear of failure. This doesn't mean you won't still experience disappointment, but it does mean that failure won't define you, and you'll be less likely to fall into overthinking when faced with challenges. Another powerful tool is to embrace a growth mindset. People with a growth mindset believe that their abilities and intelligence can be developed through effort, learning, and persistence. They see failure as part of the learning process rather than as a fixed mark of their abilities. On the other hand, people with a fixed mindset believe that their talents and intelligence are static, so any failure feels like a threat to their identity. By adopting a growth mindset, you give yourself the freedom to fail, without the fear of it defining who you are. Each setback becomes an opportunity to improve and come back stronger, which takes the sting out of failure and reduces the tendency to overthink. Here's a practical exercise. The next time you're faced with a fear of failure, ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? Often, the fear of failure is much worse than the reality. By confronting that fear head-on, you realize that even if things don't go as planned, you'll still survive, and you'll probably learn something valuable along the way. This mental exercise helps break the cycle of overthinking because it forces you to face the fear instead of letting it run wild in your mind. Failure is inevitable, but it's also a crucial part of growth. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you'll stop overthinking every decision and start moving forward with confidence. Remember, failure isn't a judgment on you. It's simply part of the process of learning and becoming better. When you reframe failure this way, you stop dreading it and start seeing it as a necessary and even valuable part of your journey. Practice gratitude. Overthinking often thrives on focusing on what we don't have, what's going wrong, or what could go wrong in the future. When you're stuck in your head, it's easy to get lost in negative thoughts and endless worry. This mental loop creates anxiety and dissatisfaction, making it hard to appreciate the good things in life. The antidote to this cycle: gratitude. The simple act of practicing gratitude can dramatically shift your mindset and help you escape the trap of overthinking by redirecting your focus to what's right in your life. Gratitude works because it changes the way your brain sees the world. When you're constantly thinking about what's missing or what could go wrong, your brain gets stuck in problem-solving mode, even when there's no immediate problem to solve. But when you shift your attention to what you already have and what's going well, your mind relaxes. You stop obsessing over hypothetical problems and start appreciating the present moment. Gratitude helps you see the abundance in your life rather than the lack, which naturally reduces the need to overanalyze or stress about the future. One of the most effective ways to practice gratitude is by keeping a gratitude journal. Every day, take a few minutes to write down 3 things you're grateful for. They don't have to be big or life-changing. Simple things like, I'm grateful for my morning coffee, or I'm thankful for the sunny weather today work just as well. The purpose of this exercise is to train your brain to look for the positives, no matter how small. By consistently focusing on what's going right, you'll start to notice that your mind becomes less prone to spiraling into overthinking. It's like rewiring your mental habits to default to appreciation rather than worry. Another powerful way to cultivate gratitude is to reflect on the challenges you've overcome. Sometimes we're so focused on what's ahead or what's not perfect yet that we forget how far we've already come. Take a moment to think about a tough situation from your past that you thought you'd never get through, but did. Remind yourself that you've survived difficult times before and grown stronger because of them. This shift in perspective not only builds resilience but also helps quiet the overthinking mind by reminding you that you're capable of handling whatever comes your way. Gratitude also helps put things into perspective. Overthinking often happens when we blow small problems out of proportion or imagine worst-case scenarios. When you practice gratitude, you're reminded of the bigger picture, of all the things in your life that are working and that you can appreciate. This doesn't mean ignoring problems, but it does mean that you approach them with a more balanced mindset. Instead of letting a single issue consume all your thoughts, you can acknowledge it while still appreciating the positives in your life. It's important to note that gratitude is not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about recognizing that even in the midst of challenges, there are still things to be thankful for. By focusing on these, you create mental space for clarity and calm. The more you practice gratitude, the more naturally it comes, and over time, you'll find that your mind becomes less cluttered with worry and more attuned to the present moment. One simple yet profound way to bring more gratitude into your life is to express it to others. Send a message to a friend, family member, or co-worker, thanking them for something they've done, or simply let them know you appreciate them. This small act of kindness not only strengthens your relationships, but also reinforces your own sense of gratitude. As you spread appreciation, you'll find that your own mindset shifts further away from overthinking and towards a more positive, grounded way of being. In the end, gratitude is a powerful tool for calming an overactive mind. It helps you step out of the cycle of overthinking by shifting your focus from what's wrong to what's right, from fear to appreciation, from anxiety to peace. When you make gratitude a regular practice, you'll find yourself feeling more present, more content, and far less likely to get trapped in the mental loops that feed overthinking. 7. Set clear boundaries. Overthinking is often the result of blurred boundaries, whether that's in relationships, work, or even within your own mind. When you don't have clear limits on what's acceptable or what's your responsibility, it's easy to spiral into mental exhaustion, worrying about how others see you, whether you're doing enough, or how to juggle everything on your plate. One of the most powerful ways to combat overthinking is to set clear boundaries, both with others and yourself. When you create firm lines around your time, energy, and emotional space, you stop letting external pressures and internal worries take over your mind. Boundaries are essential for managing mental clarity. Without them, you may find yourself constantly thinking about other people's problems, obsessing over how to meet everyone's expectations, or over-analyzing your decisions because you're trying to please others. By setting boundaries, you give yourself permission to say no without guilt and to prioritize your well-being. This stops the mental chaos that comes from spreading yourself too thin or overextending your emotional energy. For example, if you've been overthinking because you're always worried about disappointing someone, a clear boundary could be communicating your limits and sticking to them. You can't control how people will react, but you can control how much pressure you allow others to put on you. The first step in setting boundaries is getting clear on what you value and what you're willing to tolerate. If you don't know where your limits are, it's easy for people, or even your own mind, to overstep them. Ask yourself, what is most important to me? What drains my energy the most? Where do I need more space? Once you identify these areas, you can start to draw the lines that protect your mental well-being. For instance, if you find that your work is bleeding into your personal life, and causing you to overthink constantly about deadlines, it's time to set a boundary between work and home. Maybe that means no emails after a certain hour or taking weekends off to recharge. When you create these boundaries, you stop overthinking because you're no longer trying to juggle everything all at once. Personal boundaries are just as important. Sometimes, the biggest source of overthinking comes from not setting limits with yourself. Maybe you overcommit, try to be everything to everyone, or take on more than you can realistically handle. This leaves you overthinking how to manage it all, often to the point of burnout. By creating boundaries within yourself, such as limiting the amount of time you spend on a project or making self-care a priority, you prevent your mind from spiraling into over-analysis. Setting limits on social media use, for instance, can help you stop comparing yourself to others and reduce the anxiety that fuels overthinking. You protect your mental energy by being intentional about where you spend it. Another key part of setting boundaries is enforcing them. It's one thing to establish boundaries, but it's another to maintain them when people, or your own habits, start to push against them. This requires consistency and sometimes difficult conversations. But here's the thing, when you respect your boundaries, others are more likely to respect them too. If you let someone overstep a boundary once, it becomes easier for them to do it again, and easier for your mind to slip back into overthinking about how to deal with it. Holding firm to your limits not only protects your time and energy, but also builds confidence, reducing the need to second-guess your decisions. Setting boundaries is a form of self-respect. It sends a message to yourself and others that your time, energy, and mental well-being are valuable. It helps prevent the overwhelm that leads to overthinking because you're no longer spreading yourself too thin or letting external pressures dictate your mental state. When you establish clear boundaries and enforce them, you'll find that your mind has more space to rest, your stress levels decrease, and you spend far less time in the mental chaos that comes from trying to be everything to everyone. In the end, boundaries are not walls to shut people out. They're guidelines that keep you centered and prevent overthinking from running your life. When you set clear, healthy limits, you create space for peace, focus, and intentional action, leaving less room for mental clutter and over-analysis. 8. Let go of the need for approval. One of the most common triggers for overthinking is the deep-rooted desire to seek approval from others. Whether it's trying to impress your boss, gain validation from friends, or live up to family expectations, the constant need for approval can keep your mind spinning in endless loops of doubt and self-criticism. You might find yourself over-analyzing conversations, worrying about how others perceive you, or stressing about whether you're meeting their standards. The fear of not being enough in someone else's eyes is a major cause of overthinking. The next powerful lesson in breaking free from this cycle is learning to let go of the need for approval. The reality is, no matter how hard you try, you will never be able to control how others see you. People's opinions are influenced by their own experiences, biases, and expectations, most of which have nothing to do with you. Yet when we tie our sense of worth to external validation, we give away our power. We allow the opinions of others to dictate how we feel about ourselves, which leads to constant overthinking as we try to live up to expectations that may never be fully clear or achievable. Letting go of the need for approval is about reclaiming your own self-worth and deciding that you are enough, regardless of what others think. To start breaking free from this need, it's important to realize that approval seeking is rooted in insecurity. When we don't fully trust or value ourselves, we look to others to fill that gap. We crave compliments, reassurance, and positive feedback to validate our choices and our worth. But here's the thing, no amount of external validation will ever be enough to quiet your inner critic. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in it. It will never stay full. The key is to stop seeking approval from others and start finding it within yourself. This shift in mindset not only helps reduce overthinking but also builds a stronger, more authentic sense of confidence. One of the best ways to let go of approval seeking is to practice self-approval. This means developing the habit of checking in with yourself first before seeking validation from others. Ask yourself, do I feel good about this decision? Does this align with my values? When you focus on living in alignment with your own values and standards rather than trying to meet someone else's, you stop second-guessing yourself. You become more grounded in your decisions because they're based on what's true for you, not on what you think will earn you praise from others. Another powerful strategy is to challenge the belief that you need to be liked by everyone. The truth is, not everyone is going to like you, and that's okay. Trying to please everyone is exhausting and unrealistic, and it only fuels more overthinking as you try to mold yourself into what you think others want you to be. Instead, focus on being authentic. When you show up as your true self, the right people will be drawn to you, and you'll attract relationships based on mutual respect and shared values. Letting go of the need for universal approval frees you from the mental gymnastics of trying to be someone you're not, and it allows you to live more authentically. A helpful exercise to break the cycle of approval seeking is to practice small acts of self-assertion. Start by making decisions without asking for anyone else's opinion. It could be as simple as choosing a restaurant or deciding how to spend your weekend. The more you practice trusting your own judgment, the more confident you'll become in your ability to make decisions without needing others to validate them. Over time, this builds a sense of internal approval that reduces the need to constantly seek it from outside sources. Letting go of the need for approval doesn't mean you stop caring about others' opinions entirely. It means you stop letting those opinions dictate your self-worth. When you stop seeking validation from others and start approving of yourself, you'll find that the mental chatter of overthinking begins to quiet. You'll make decisions more confidently, feel more grounded in who you are, and experience less anxiety about how others perceive you. The freedom that comes from no longer needing approval is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself, and it's a crucial step toward a more peaceful, less overthinking-filled life. By releasing the need for approval, you reclaim your power and your peace of mind. You stop letting the fear of judgment control you, and in doing so, you start living for yourself, authentically, confidently, and with far less mental clutter. 9. Limit your information intake. In today's world, overthinking often thrives on information overload. With endless streams of news, social media updates, notifications, and opinions coming at you from all angles, it's no wonder your brain feels like it's constantly in overdrive. The more information you consume, the more material your mind has to analyze, question, and worry about. You might find yourself drowning in research, obsessing over small details, or endlessly comparing yourself to others online. One of the most effective ways to break the cycle of overthinking is to limit your information intake. By setting boundaries around what you consume and how often you consume it, you can reduce the mental clutter and create space for clarity and calm. The modern world encourages constant engagement, with information coming at you 24/7. You check your phone for a quick update and end up scrolling for hours, consuming an overwhelming mix of news, opinions, and random content. This flood of information doesn't just fill your mind, it overstimulates it. Your brain tries to process everything, but when there's too much to take in, it leads to analysis paralysis. You start to overthink because there's just too much to think about. When you reduce the amount of information you take in, you give your brain a chance to breathe, process, and focus on what truly matters. One of the easiest ways to limit information intake is by setting clear boundaries around your digital habits. Start by cutting back on how much time you spend on social media, news sites, or any other platforms that flood you with information. You don't have to go cold turkey, but try setting specific times to check in and then stepping away. For example, limit your news consumption to 15 minutes in the morning or check social media only once in the evening. This small change can significantly reduce the mental noise that contributes to overthinking, freeing your mind from constant distractions. Another key aspect of limiting information intake is being selective about the quality of information you consume. Not all information is created equal. Some content is designed to provoke emotional responses, fear, outrage, or envy, which can fuel overthinking. For instance, reading about every global crisis can leave you feeling anxious and powerless, leading to endless worry about things you can't control. Or scrolling through highlight reels on social media can make you compare your life to others, triggering self-doubt and second-guessing. By choosing high-quality, reliable sources of information and avoiding sensationalized or emotionally manipulative content, you can protect your mind from unnecessary stress and overthinking. A helpful strategy to reduce information overload is to practice a digital detox periodically. Set aside a few hours, a day, or even a weekend where you disconnect from the constant flow of information. Use this time to recharge, focus on offline activities, and give your mind a break from the flood of data. You'll be amazed at how refreshed and clear-headed you feel afterward. This break from information allows you to reset your mental state and come back with a more focused, intentional approach to what you choose to engage with. Limiting your information intake also applies to decision-making. Overthinking is often the result of trying to gather every piece of data before making a choice. While it's important to be informed, there's a point where more information doesn't lead to better decisions. It leads to overanalyzing and indecision. Learn to recognize when you have enough information to make a decision and trust yourself to act. You don't need to know every detail or consider every possible scenario. In fact, overloading yourself with too much data can make it harder to make a clear, confident choice. Another tip is to curate the information you consume by focusing on topics and content that genuinely add value to your life. Instead of mindlessly scrolling or consuming information out of habit, be intentional. Ask yourself, is this helping me grow? Is this adding something positive to my day? By filtering what you let into your mind, you reduce the clutter that contributes to overthinking and create mental space for more meaningful, productive thoughts. Ultimately, limiting your information intake is about protecting your mental energy. When you constantly bombard your brain with data, it becomes harder to focus, relax, or find peace of mind. But when you take control of the flow of information and reduce the noise, you gain clarity and reduce the tendency to overthink. Your mind becomes less cluttered, and you can focus on what truly matters without getting lost in a sea of unnecessary details and distractions. 10. Cultivate self-compassion. Overthinking is often fueled by harsh self-criticism. When you constantly question your decisions, replay past mistakes, or worry about not measuring up, you're engaging in a battle with yourself. This inner critic is relentless, making you doubt your worth, obsess over what went wrong, and focus on your perceived flaws. The more critical you are, the more you overthink. The key to breaking this destructive cycle is to cultivate self-compassion. By being kinder to yourself, you reduce the need to overanalyze your every move and begin to foster a sense of inner peace. Self-compassion means treating yourself with the same kindness, understanding, and patience that you would offer to a close friend. When you mess up, instead of beating yourself up, you respond with gentleness. This doesn't mean letting yourself off the hook for mistakes or ignoring areas for improvement. It means acknowledging that you are human and that making mistakes is part of life. Too often, we hold ourselves to impossible standards of perfection, and when we fall short, we spiral into overthinking, replaying scenarios, and criticizing ourselves for not being good enough. Self-compassion helps you break free from this mental punishment and move forward with more clarity and self-acceptance. One of the most powerful aspects of self-compassion is that it allows you to see your struggles and imperfections through a more balanced lens. When you're stuck in overthinking, it's easy to magnify small mistakes and turn them into something bigger than they really are. A missed deadline becomes proof that you're failing at your job. An awkward social interaction makes you feel like you're bad at relationships. Self-compassion helps you put these moments in perspective. Instead of catastrophizing, you remind yourself that everyone makes mistakes and that no one is perfect. This shift in perspective helps you stop overthinking because you realize that your missteps don't define you. To start practicing self-compassion, begin by paying attention to your inner dialogue. When you catch yourself slipping into self-criticism, pause and ask, would I speak to a friend this way? If the answer is no, then why speak to yourself that way? Replace the harsh words with something kinder, more supportive and understanding. For example, instead of saying, I'm so stupid for making that mistake, try saying, I made a mistake, but that's okay. I'll learn from it and do better next time. This simple change in how you speak to yourself can dramatically reduce the intensity of overthinking because you're no longer adding fuel to the fire of self-doubt. Another practice to cultivate self-compassion is to allow yourself to be a work in progress. Overthinkers tend to get stuck in the idea that they have to get everything right immediately or they're a failure. But growth is a journey, and it's messy. Give yourself permission to make mistakes, to learn and to evolve without the pressure of needing to be perfect right now. When you allow yourself the space to grow at your own pace, you reduce the fear of failure and stop the mental loops of overanalyzing every misstep. Self-compassion also involves recognizing that you're not alone in your struggles. Overthinking often makes us feel isolated, as though we're the only ones who worry or make mistakes. But in reality, everyone deals with their own inner critic and their own moments of doubt. By reminding yourself that imperfection is a universal experience, you can stop feeling like your struggles are a reflection of personal failure. This understanding creates a sense of connection and reduces the tendency to overthink, knowing that you're simply part of the shared human experience. Finally, practicing self-compassion means being patient with yourself. Overthinking often stems from impatience, the belief that you should have everything figured out right now. But personal growth takes time, and it's okay to take small steps toward improvement. Instead of rushing to fix everything at once, celebrate your progress, however slow it may seem. Each step forward, no matter how small, is worth recognizing. In the end, self-compassion is about giving yourself the grace to be human. When you stop expecting perfection from yourself and start offering kindness, you'll find that the need to overthink begins to fade. Your mind becomes a more peaceful place, and you're able to navigate life with more clarity, resilience, and self-love. 11. Take action, no matter how small. One of the biggest contributors to overthinking is inaction. When you're stuck in your head, mulling over every possible scenario, weighing every potential outcome, and second-guessing your decisions, it's easy to become paralyzed. You think that by analyzing something just a little longer, you'll come to the perfect solution. But in reality, overthinking often keeps you stuck. The longer you stay in this mental loop, the harder it becomes to make a move. The final lesson in overcoming overthinking is to take action, even if it's a small step. Action breaks the cycle of overthinking by shifting your focus from endless thought to tangible progress. The truth is, most of the time, the things we overthink about aren't solved by more thinking. They're solved by doing. Whether it's a project you're procrastinating on, a decision you can't make, or a fear of failure holding you back. Action is the key to cutting through the mental fog. When you take even the smallest step forward, you start to see things more clearly. You gain information, experience, and momentum. These small steps build confidence, and before you know it, you're no longer stuck in overthinking mode because you're too busy moving forward. One of the reasons we hesitate to take action is because we want certainty. We want to know that we're making the right decision or that everything will turn out perfectly. But the truth is, you can never have complete certainty before you act. Overthinking tricks you into believing that if you just think about something long enough, you'll find that certainty. But in reality, the only way to gain clarity is through action. Every step you take teaches you something new. Maybe the first step isn't perfect, but it will lead you to the next step and the one after that. The path unfolds as you move. Start by identifying one area in your life where overthinking is holding you back. Maybe it's a project at work, a personal goal, or a decision you've been putting off. Now break it down into the smallest possible action you can take. It doesn't have to be a big, bold move. It could be as simple as sending an email, making a phone call, writing a paragraph, or setting aside 10 minutes to focus on it. The goal is to get out of your head and into motion. Once you take that first small step, you'll notice that your overthinking starts to lose its grip on you. Another important point to remember is that action doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect plan is one of the biggest traps that overthinkers fall into. Perfectionism paralyzes you. You think, if I can't do this perfectly, I won't do it at all. But the truth is, taking imperfect action is far more productive than waiting for the perfect plan. Progress is built through trial and error, through making mistakes and learning from them. When you stop demanding perfection and allow yourself to take messy, imperfect action, you free yourself from the mental blocks that keep you overthinking. Taking action also creates momentum. One small step often leads to another, and before you know it, you've made significant progress. This forward motion gives you a sense of accomplishment and confidence, reducing the need to overanalyze every step. The more you act, the more you realize that you don't have to figure everything out all at once. You don't need to see the entire path to take the next step. It's also helpful to remember that inaction has a cost. While overthinking gives the illusion of safety, keeping you from making a mistake or failing, it actually keeps you stuck in a place of uncertainty and stress. The longer you delay action, the more anxious and overwhelmed you become. But when you take action, even if it's imperfect, you break free from this paralysis. You gain clarity, confidence, and control over your situation. So the next time you catch yourself spiraling into overthinking, remind yourself, action is the antidote. You don't need to know all the answers to take the first step. Start small. Be kind to yourself and trust that progress will follow. Every action, no matter how minor, is a step away from overthinking and a step toward the life you want to create. 12. Trust yourself. At the core of overthinking is often a lack of self-trust. We doubt our ability to make the right decisions, second-guess our instincts, and worry endlessly about the potential outcomes of our choices. This inner uncertainty fuels the mental loops of overanalysis, keeping us stuck in a cycle of what-ifs and indecision. The final and perhaps most transformative lesson in overcoming overthinking is learning to trust yourself. When you begin to cultivate self-trust, you silence the doubts that keep your mind racing and replace them with confidence in your own ability to handle whatever life throws your way. Self-trust doesn't mean believing that you'll always get everything right or never make mistakes. Instead, it's about trusting that you have the strength, resilience, and resourcefulness to deal with whatever happens, even if things don't go according to plan. Overthinking is often a defense mechanism, a way to try to control outcomes and avoid uncertainty. But the reality is, life is full of uncertainty, and no amount of overthinking will change that. What will change it is learning to trust yourself to navigate that uncertainty. One of the most important steps to building self-trust is learning to listen to your own intuition. Overthinkers tend to seek external validation, constantly asking others for their opinions or searching for answers outside themselves. While it's okay to seek advice, relying too heavily on external input weakens your own confidence. Instead, start tuning into your inner voice. When faced with a decision, pause and ask yourself, what feels right for me? Your intuition is often quieter than the noise of overthinking, but it's there. The more you practice listening to it, the stronger it will become. Over time, you'll find that you don't need to endlessly debate every choice. You'll learn to trust your gut instincts and act on them. Another way to strengthen self-trust is by acknowledging your past successes. Overthinkers often have a selective memory. They focus on their failures, mistakes, or the times things didn't go as planned, while forgetting all the moments when they handled challenges effectively. Take some time to reflect on the decisions you've made in the past, particularly the ones that worked out well. Remind yourself of the times you trusted yourself, took a risk, and succeeded. By consciously remembering these moments, you reinforce the belief that you are capable of making good decisions and handling whatever comes next. Self-trust also grows through experience. The more decisions you make and actions you take, the more evidence you gather that you can rely on yourself. Start with small decisions if you're feeling unsure. Each time you make a choice and follow through, you strengthen your self-trust muscle. Even if things don't go perfectly, you'll learn that you're capable of adapting, solving problems, and moving forward. With every decision, your confidence grows, and overthinking begins to fade because you no longer feel the need to analyze every possible outcome in advance. It's also important to let go of the fear of making mistakes. Overthinking is often driven by the desire to avoid failure, but mistakes are an inevitable part of life. Learning to trust yourself means accepting that you will make mistakes sometimes, and that's okay. What matters is not whether you're perfect, but whether you can learn from those mistakes and keep going. Trust that you have the ability to grow, to recover from setbacks, and to improve. When you stop fearing failure, you free yourself from the need to overanalyze every possible outcome because you know you'll be able to handle whatever happens. Ultimately, trusting yourself is about reclaiming your power. It's about shifting from a place of doubt and hesitation to one of confidence and self-assurance. When you trust yourself, overthinking becomes less necessary because you're no longer paralyzed by uncertainty or fear. You move through life with a greater sense of ease, knowing that whatever challenges arise, you have the inner strength and wisdom to handle them. So, when you find yourself spiraling into overthinking, remind yourself, I can trust myself. Trust in your ability to make decisions, to learn from your experiences, and to navigate the unknown. The more you trust yourself, the less you'll overthink, and the more empowered and confident you'll feel in every aspect of your life. And there you have it. 12 powerful lessons to help you break free from the trap of overthinking and take control of your mind. But here's the thing. These insights are only as useful as the actions you take. You've got the tools. Now it's time to start using them in your everyday life. Trust me, the shift is subtle at first, but once you begin applying these lessons, you'll notice a powerful transformation. Less mental clutter, more peace, and a greater sense of clarity. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. I'd love to hear how these lessons resonate with you. Have any of them sparked a moment of clarity? Are you ready to tackle overthinking head-on? Drop your thoughts in the comments. and let's build a conversation around what's working for you. If you found these lessons helpful, hit that like button. And if you're ready for more content to help you take back control of your life, don't forget to subscribe. This is just the beginning of a deeper dive into creating a more resilient, focused, and fulfilled you. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss what's coming next.